Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Hello, and welcome to another exciting edition of Cannabis Common Sense. We have a very good guest tonight. His name is JOHN SEITZ. He's in Missouri, and he has an incredible bus that has a hempwood floor and hemp cabinets made by the Hempwood Company. So stay tuned for more of that, and we'll have his interview immediately after this. But first, let's bring on our infamous dancing cannabis leaves.
I feel the force.
If you or a loved one are looking for a doctor to help you get a medical marijuana permit anywhere in the United States, we have a referral service. Just give us a call at 503-235-4606. That's 503-235-4606. Without further ado, here is tonight's interview. I would like to welcome Johnny Seitz to our show. Johnny has a vehicle that I got to see at the Texas Hemp Stock just a couple weeks ago. What was it? May 20th, 21st?
Was it 24th and 25th?
That's it. 25th. Anyway, we got to see tell us about your bus and your organization. First, tell us about your organization, Johnny.
Okay, well, I kind of run my own little business, just trying to bring people together and share all these cool things that we find out here in the world. And we call it Hip World, but we spell it with a W. But it stands for, like, we all want to live in a hip world, but we want it to be happy. We want it to be wholesome, which means good from the ground up, and peaceful. And since it's a name, we can spell it however we want, so we call it Hip World. And a few years back, I was fortunate enough on a job site to find an old 81 Chevy bus sitting out in the field. It's kind of one size bigger than the short bus, so it's not a big bus, but it's not quite the small bus. And it was an Arkansas Razorback auxiliary bus, and we worked it over, renovated it, and filled it with hemp flooring, hemp insulation, hemp fabrics, Willie's Remedy CBD lines, and hemp proteins and stuff, so that we can show people ways you can get the bad out of your life and good in, in like practical ways that they can see. Because a lot of times people hear about it, but they don't see it, so it just doesn't seem real. And then when they come in the bus and they see the hempwood flooring and the hempwood cabinets, and then you can see and touch the hemp insulation, and we can tell you and we can show you the hemp proteins that you should be eating, so you're getting your full cannabinoids and all the stuff that we know the plant does for you. Well, then that's kind of what we do, is we just travel around and we try and use the bus because she's old and vintage, and we've taken everything that's added onto her, because you've seen her, she's got awnings and an upper walk ramp and pull-out back porch and a couple other things, and that's all stuff I built out of salvage yard and put on the bus, so that it would show that things that sometimes, with just a little determination and skill, you can take something that other people might have thought wasn't worth anything, and now you have this, what I think is absolutely beautiful vintage bus that we can travel around in. We can offer this experience where you can see the things firsthand, farm to home practices. And we also, because of the way it's set up now, it's got the podcasting area in it. So we can set up and we can have like a one-on-one conversation, kind of like we are now, but we can bring that to almost any event. So we can catch, like we did at Texas Hemp Stock, where we were able to take and catch you and other vendors and other speakers, and be able to share all their stories together. Because, as a traveler, we find out that as much as we're kind of sold a story that we're all very different and against each other, all of this, when you travel, you find out we're so very much alike. And so by carrying and sharing that story with us, then as people watch and they see what we're doing, we're hoping that that helps break down social barriers. And then as we do that, we can also expose them to things like hemp flooring and hemp insulation and ways that you can get these bad products that you're building your house out of there and get these new ones in and support our communities, our economy, our farmers, everything all together as one, while also just getting beautiful products that are healthier and happier for our homes, ourselves, our planet. So that's kind of, I think that sums it up.
So where are you based from, Johnny?
We're in Southwest Missouri. Yeah, I'm here in Southwest Missouri. Right.
The Show Me State. So
Yes.
tell me about the cannabis laws and the hemp laws in Missouri.
So I know as far as our hemp growing, a couple of years ago, we were one of the largest fiber producers, and it was just like our first year to get to grow. So we have a really good growth. So we do have a good hemp market. We're still running into, from what my understanding is, I can't stay as up on it as some people are. I try, but we're still needing some processors, and we're still just needing more manufacturing going on. But we do have some really good companies here in Missouri. The other side of the state, we've got like Rockwater and some other companies that are making hempcrete blocks and things of that nature, and they've got a lot of beautiful products coming out. So on the hemp front, I feel really good about Missouri that they are pushing forward. We are getting it out there, and it's basically legal. On the medical and recreational, it's also legal here, so you can get a medical card, and you can also just go into a dispensary as a ID bearing 21-year-old adult and buy your cannabis if you'd like.
When
That's
did
what you want.
recreational sales begin?
I believe it was just a couple of years ago. Yeah.
So
It's been
how did you first hear about hemp?
oh goodness. So um, I was a curious little teenager. We lived out in the country. I moved around a lot actually. But we had moved from Missouri to Texas, and then at one time I went out to California for a little while, and then I came home, and my I found a book in all of the stuff that we had that was called "The Emperor Wears No Clothes." And as a teenager living there in the country, you dive into knowledge, and so there was so much knowledge in the book. And as a farm kid, it made sense to me. The idea that we could farm this product and it helps regenerate our soil, which right now they're saying we got maybe 40 grows left if we're lucky. I mean, that's crazy. That's 40 years of being able to make food, and it's not going to be very healthy towards the end. It's not going to be like, oh, 40 years, your time's up. Now it doesn't grow anymore. No, it's going to get real yucky before that's just where it's like dead. But growing the plant, just growing it, like George Washington Carver finding out peanuts could do it, and you find out hemp can do this, put the nutrients back into the soil, and all the different things you can make out of it. And you find out that it's kind of in my view, one of the first major corporate takeovers. Apologize, there's a train passing by in the background. One of the first major like corporate takeovers of our country, and of our rights and stuff, because before then hemp was a commodity. But of course, I know this from reading the book. So that's really what got me. So let's see, would have been in the mid 80s.
I see. And then when did you start becoming an activist for hemp?
Well, I tried in the early 90s. I came up with the idea of the Hemp for World Peace logo that you had seen, and we talked about when we were hanging out there in Hempstock a little bit, Texas Hempstock. And it was the idea that, there was things even back then trying to divide us, and you could tell that they were using that. And I was like, we need something that is that common thread that we all share, And so, knowing that this product could help from our farms and to our local communities, because it doesn't make sense to not just have it grown local, produced local, and manufactured local, but that means everywhere too, you know. And so the idea was to use this and build something, maybe a brand that we could all get behind. We could find businesses that were doing things like the way Hempwood does their stuff, and then they would be kind of considered a hip product, you know. And then we could find other companies like the Hempitecture that's making the insulation, or these other companies we find doing amazing things, you know, the proteins that we get, and that would be another hip product. And then maybe we could get into clothing and stuff and different things, because we had seen a jean company back then. Arizona Jeans kind of came out of nowhere, and I was like, man, that was kind of a smooth move the way they did it, you know. And I was like, if you could do something like that, but do it in a way where the brand actually represented the people, like it actually represented the people. That's what it's built for. Like, the people are its shareholders, you know. Then maybe you end up in a situation where you have the skater kid and the businessman on the elevator, and of course at first they kind of side-eye each other, you know. And then the skater kid notices the business guy has HWP on his cufflinks, and the businessman notices the skater kid has HWP on his shorts, and they realize they're both a little hip, you know. And they kind of see each other in each other for a minute, and when they leave the elevator, they kind of give each other a nod or a wave or a little something, you know. And these days and age, it'd be a fist bump and carry on, you know. And so the idea was to build a brand that would unite people. But, you know, life also takes you its ways. And so I had a bunch of drawings and things made up, but, you know, again, life took it its ways. And so 20 years later, I ended up in a situation where I went down to visit Willie Nelson's ranch for a concert event down there. And when I came home, my family had moved on. You know, it's kind of one of the life things that happens. And that really just kind of was a passion. And that life had kind of been the reason why I hadn't been able to follow that passion. So it's one of those moments where, you know, if you don't do it, you'll always regret it. And if you at least try, the worst you can do is say, well, at least I tried, you know? And so it was one of those jump moments, and everything in the universe had led me to that moment. And so I just jumped. So that would have been 2015 when I launched actually the websites and all of the stuff, got all the stuff going for, we tried to put hemp for world peace, but in 2015, none of the banks would touch us because we had hemp in the name, even though we didn't sell any products. And the products we did do were promotional, like t-shirts and hats and things like that. And they weren't made with hemp because we hadn't found a distributor that could make them, you know, at any price we could afford to sell to anybody, you know. And so that's when I launched all of that. And then we've been fortunate enough, they changed the name of the event down at Willie's to Luck. And I've been lucky enough to go every year since. Yeah. And then we found the bus. It's been 6 years, I believe, since I found the bus. And it might be getting a little longer than that now because she's made quite a few trips. So
how did you hear about the Texas hemp stock where we met just a couple of weeks ago?
Well, so when we go down to Willie's, that's always during South by Southwest. And so right during spring break, March, you know, and we came down to South by Southwest and we got to showcase at a couple events, and we ran into Justin James, and he gave us a little postcard about hemp stock. And then there was some mutual communication between the people that had helped us get that event and get set up to those events. And then Justin James and the crew there at Texas Hemp Stock and everything. And then one day I was at work working on a shower because, you know, that's how we have to pay for things. So I still have my day job. And I got a call in the middle of the day, and it was Milan. And I believe you met Milan. And she's a beautiful spirit, and she runs Texas Hemp Walk. And she was kind of working as a I don't know, a liaison, and she told me what the position was, but basically a coordinator. And so she asked me if I'd be interested in it. And since we had heard about it, had a little bit of communication, I was absolutely interested. And then she had Michael call me, and Michael and I had a conversation, and then we were invited, and loaded up the bus from Missouri and drove it down there and set it up. And
All right.
Yeah.
Well, it was good meeting you, and I really was impressed with the quality of the cabinet and the flooring. How did you first hear about hemp wood, and what led you to remodel your bus with this really nice, very hard material? One thing people should know is that hemp wood, which is a brand name, there are other producers. Board, Hip Board is one, and they produce both of them have different techniques and different products. But hemp wood is harder than hickory and oak, and about the same hardness as steel. So it's an incredibly durable material. I don't know if you know this, but back in about 1990, a couple of my friends, William Condi and David Sieber, got hemp fiber and ran through the Wood Products Laboratory at Washington State University in Pullman, Washington. And at that time, they said, this is a great material for medium density fiberboard and other products, and that it was about as hard as steel, the same kind of results. But it surprised me when I first saw the hempwood product was at the Southern Hemp Expo, which is put on by the people at the NOCO Hemp Expo. And they had Greg Wilson had a booth there, and I was just amazed with it. We interviewed him on this show. I think it was about October of 2022. It's been a while. But how did you first come across hempwood products?
Well, it had always kind of been a goal of mine. I don't know, being a hemp activist kind of person, I knew these products existed. So I was like, well, if I'm going to build my bus, I would want to put, as much hemp in it as possible. I didn't know what all the possibilities were, but just that's what I wanted to do. And I have to give thanks to my niece, Christina. She turned around and we were talking, and I had asked for a little bit of help. And I had mentioned what I wanted to do, and she reached out to the Hempwood Company and found them and was like, hey, look at this. This is what this company does. And I was blown away by it, And so we talked to Greg and found out more about the product. He's really hands-on with his orders and stuff. And so we talked to him and got some product shipped in and put in our floors. That was our first one. And then at that same time, we had talked to the insulation company too and got our insulation brought in. So we basically just shelled the whole inside of the bus all the way to the bones and the outer skin, basically, and cleaned out all the old stuff that was in it and started all new again and put it all back with the hemp insulation and the hemp flooring. So yeah, it's a beautiful product. And then we'd always kind of wanted to, to add the hemp cabinetry. It is still on the price with hardwood, so it's about $8 a square foot, and being self-funded, it takes time. I have to do projects in little waves, so I'll work up and get just enough, and I'll be like, oh, I got enough, I can get cabinets. So that's what we did there. But they helped us out a lot. They made a custom countertop for us. Those are to our measurements, and they don't have a big countertop. They just cut down. They make that for you. They made all the cabinet doors and stuff for us, just specialty sized, and I think it's beautiful. And when we had to cut it down a little, we ended up with a perfect piece to make a backsplash and all of that. So it's actually pretty enough. It's supposed to have a stove and a sink put in it, and I can't get myself to cut the hole in it because it looks so pretty as a display cabinet.
Well, you don't have a lot of other room to work with, though. Maybe you can figure out a better place.
Oh, for the stove and the sink?
Easy for me to say. So,
yeah.
Do you have anything on the horizon? Anything you're going to be going to in the near future?
We've had a couple different opportunities pop up here in Missouri. So we're waiting to see exactly which ones pan out. So I can't say exactly which ones. There's some different events that might even happen, not this coming weekend, but the one after that. We're seeing if we can't get in. It's a local. Um, it's more of the medicinal and recreational side of things, but as much as we travel and we want to show people who have no hemp knowledge, we also want to show people who have some hemp knowledge, but maybe not the idea that what we're talking about is, insulation and flooring. That's a big deal. Most people, like I said, when we stop and we try and show them and stuff, one of the biggest jokes, everybody's like, we'll see somebody and they're like, hey, hook us up. And I'm like, you guys want some hemp? And they're like, yeah. And I'll take them to the bus and I show them flooring and insulation, and you see the looks on their face. And I'm like, this is what we're talking about. They're like, you can't smoke that. And I'm like, we're talking about hemp. We're talking about industrial hemp. We're talking about ways to make our homes safer. I mean, I know that we have our medical and even recreational, and there's needs for all of that. But the market and need for that comparatively to the market and need for our industrial uses is minuscule. Our industrial uses, there's almost no product in your home or in your car that can't be made from hemp, except it's biodegradable now. It's biocomposites. It's made with natural processes, and just growing the hemp to even put it through the processes helps your soil, helps your air, helps your ozone, helps the terpene levels in the atmosphere, which help our UVB and our UVA and all that. So, as much as people are worried about their sun exposure now because it seems to be a little different, it's harsher. We're losing a lot of these molecules that used to be in our atmosphere. And this plant growing is one of the largest producers of it on the planet, in some cases comparable to the ocean. And the ocean gets 3/4 of the planet to do it with, So it just makes sense. It used to be part of our culture. And when you dive into it and find out how many times that now, through the government letting out documentation and letting it be shown, that sometimes this plant was completely villainized for reasons that had nothing to do with the actual uses of the plant, the actual repercussions, or anything like that. It was very much villainized just to destroy communities, destroy the idea of some of our farm independence, and make us more dependent upon a system that they could control, which is horrible. And, it makes you feel like a conspiracy kind of person. But when you really get into it and look, it's not hard to find. It's not like you have to go down a rabbit hole to find it out. It's very blatant. They say it in very plain language. We know this isn't a scourge to the communities, but we can use it and villainize it as a gateway so that we can control those same communities, destroy those communities, take away their power so that we can keep power. And when we live in a democracy that is based on the idea of just keeping power, the only thing that helps is back to the idea of saying the emperor wears no clothes. You must speak truth to power. And eventually enough people see it, like in the story that the title's kind of from, and eventually they go, hey man, the king's walking around naked. and he's ain't got no clothes on, and we're all supposed to pretend he had clothes on. That makes no sense. Why don't we all just say it? He got no clothes. So
Yeah, so it's it's always been about money and power and the centralization of economic and political control. They and the movies are out there that they made up. Reefer Madness shows people smoking a joint, going crazy, and killing themselves or their family and friends. And that's how they made it illegal, by calling it marijuana. They said it was hemp. There's no way they could have criminalized that. Everybody knew what hemp was, or most people did. So, it's something that, the fiber can help stop deforestation and be used for everything that wood is used for. I mean, wood will still be useful, but we don't need as much of it. And it can be used for everything that petroleum's made of. And, you talked about the biodegradable things out there. There's that current product that's made out of cornstarch and hemp fiber that just turns to dirt in a few months, or even shorter period of time in a compost pile. So we can resolve so many different issues with it. So I'm happy to see you there. Tell me about other groups there in Missouri, in the Midwest, that you interact with. I mean, I met Milan at the Texas Hemp Stock as well. She had some great hemp clothing.
Yeah. I have to first make a small comment about, as much as, like you say, we've seen their films, Reefer Madness, and for us, we probably know, but for anyone who might see who doesn't know, as much as they have Reefer Madness, they also have Hemp for Victory, and so it's the arguing of the both sides there, and the way that they will boldly just turn their face and say the opposite of what they just said, and
but for marijuana with an H. So there during World War II, if you needed to grow hemp for fiber or seed oil, then they gave you a permit to grow marijuana. So they had adopted that new name again.
Yeah.
Based on racist hypocrisy, really.
Yeah. Now, here in Missouri, the truth be told, it's kind of odd. I don't know as many groups as I would like to know. That's something that's really been something we've been trying to do lately, is network out and get to know more and more of them. I meet a lot of them. One of the first events we got invited to, right after we got the insulation and we got the flooring for the very first time, we were invited down to the Texas Hemp Summit. And so we went down there and we met with a bunch of people, and that's where we got to first show Greg and them the floors, took him for a ride, and Jacob Wydell, who's helping make the standards for all the products, because any product we build with has to have a code and a standard in order to be certified safe to use, and to make sure people are making it right when you're doing things like hempcrete and stuff, so it has the actual structural capacities it's supposed to, those kind of things. And then we met the team from Hempitecture and stuff, which was super cool. But we also I got to meet. That's when I got to meet Randy from I believe Rockwater, and I have an issue sometimes where I have a hard time with names. I ran a veterans hall for a while, and so after you meet so many people for 3.5 years, it gets a little hard. I have to interact a few times, and then I'm like, okay, now I know exactly who that person is. But so in the area, we've traveled as far as like in the local area to like Augusta, Kansas, which is it's about 2.5 hours from here, almost as far as it is to go to St. Louis and them. Not quite as far, I guess, but they're, over in Kansas, and of course they're doing a lot. They're a hemp processor, but they're doing the hempy hearts and the proteins and stuff, and then they're helping spread the news and awareness. And then we had a couple different farms here we were working with and stuff, but they kind of have went down on their own for whatever different reasons, and so I'm always open to contacts. So if you know anybody in the area or anybody around that, you're like, hey, I really should, I appreciate getting to meet them. And that would be part of one of the reasons we're trying to make the road trip adventure with the bus, and one of the reasons we're trying to get into the local area and travel up to meet the people up towards Rolla. There's some interesting people up there we want to meet and maybe get to tell their stories. And so the goal would be, since the bus has this, the ability to be able to showcase as it goes, and then also when we get someplace, gather the stories, and then we can, break out the cameras and gather footage of the places. Maybe we can bring that to people in a way, because not everybody's going to get to go in a bus or even just in their car to a bunch of these different hemp distributors, hemp industry leaders, processing plants and manufacturing plants and all the places, and learn about it. And they also couldn't have everybody trying to do that anyway. So if we can take the bus as that format and go into these places and share those kind of things with people, I think that's a really good use of our talents and abilities. And if I have the ability, then to me, it's kind of a responsibility. And then we can take it to other events, music events and things like that. And then we can again, share that knowledge. You and I have talked about it, things like Farm Aid, how when you go to it, there's a lot, it's beautiful music and everybody getting together. There's speeches and there's presentations about how you can help local farmers and you can help community farmers, and how we keep our farms in the families instead of in the corporations, so that they're supporting our communities and our families. Because we lose that to the corporations, we lose our communities, we lose our voice. Well, then the idea behind that would be to bring this message the same way, to be able to bring practical industrial hemp into people's environment and show them in a fun and entertaining way. So that's kind of the goal, to branch out from this area and learn more, and share maybe that learning process as we meet more people with everybody else.
Well, that's great. Let's see. So if someone wants to reach you or contact you or watch your podcasts and live streams, tell our audience how they can do that.
Everything we do is under HWP World. On all our social medias, it's all at HWP World. Again, everything's in a hip world. We have a hwpworld.com. And of course, you can reach out on there. You can go to our support page if you'd like to donate. You can go to the contact me pages. You can send me an email, anything like that. I'm pretty reachable on social medias. So if you follow the pages on, say, Facebook or Instagram or anything like that, it's pretty easy to find me along with the Hip World pages. And so it's pretty easy to reach out. They all have messaging. And so you can message me through Instagram or through Facebook or almost any social media platform, if they offer it. And it's always just me here on the other end, one little hippie, trying to make the world better, one smile at a time, one little bit of hemp knowledge. That's what, what we got. It's what you do. So.
You want to tell our audience anything about the experience at the Texas Hemp Stock Festival?
I almost don't even know where to begin, but it was absolutely amazing. To go down there, I didn't really. I'd like to say I didn't have much expectations, but you'll build your own little thoughts of what may or may not happen and everything, and then we get down there and you get to see how much they had taken this normal campground and turned it into an event. There was a lot of really good preparation that went in. It was beautiful. The vendor showcases were awesome, and the people that were around were amazing. The musicians, the presentations, all of that. But if we're just being candid, I get to say I felt a little, I hate to use the word spoiled, but I don't know what to use. It was awesome to me because we set the bus up so that we could hope to maybe share the experience with everybody, catch some stories from some people, maybe get to talk to a few artists if we were lucky, and those kind of things, and share their stories and their experiences and show how we're all in it together. But on a personal note, then we ended up in the situation where the first night you showed up at the bus and I got to interview you and to find out, because again, I've read that book when I was a young teenager. It's influenced a major chunk of my life. So running into one of the major influences in my life, and just being in awe and the idea that I would get to share the space, we would get to have a conversation, get to interview and talk and meet each other, and then also hang out and meet each other, that was beautiful. And for that to happen once was beyond comprehension, but for it to happen, you saw the bus became a centerpiece. Everybody was like, hey, we want to go interview on the bus. And that might be because of you. Once they were like, well, Paul went to the bus, we all want to go to the bus. But that was amazing. And I'll tell you, out of nothing else, you can't take away those moments and memories from me. And I hope from everybody else who got to be part of it. Being able to do that was amazing. Being able to share that with everybody, because you saw we had a monitor on the outside of the bus, so as we had our conversations, people came up and got to at least listen and see it even live on the spot, and then being able to share it back out with each other. But to be able to do that with so many spirits, so many people, and find out how many amazing people there are out here trying to just do good in the world. You know, so many of these people, it's not a paying thing. You're not doing this because it pays money. You're losing a lot of money, but you're doing it because it has a passion. You know, you have this ability and you know it's the right thing to do. You know, once as a construction worker, as someone who builds homes, once you find out that the homes you're building are toxic and there's another way to do it, you can't help but want to share that. But seeing so many other people who are doing it too was super encouraging, because there was a time when you wouldn't have found that many people that were doing it, you know, and watching all of them as someone who, you know, it's my job to observe a little, and watching all of them take so many lessons from you and from Casper and from Joe and from all of them, you know, and to share that inspiration, that was a beautiful life experience to me, even beyond the festival. But it was beautiful because hemp stock is what brought all that together, you know, and that's really, in my book, one of the biggest things about it. It's amazing that we get to see the music. Music unites us all. It's the most beautiful art. It just brings us all together. But those shared moments and memories, those things where we're all like, wow, remember this, remember that, those are our common threads. Those are our things that remind us in the heat of the moment, hey, hold on, that's my brother. That's my family member. That's my this or that. That's the guy I went to hemp stock with. That's, you know, that's his family. And to me, that was the one of the most beautiful aspects of the event. You know, I love everything they're doing about it. You know, you got to learn, you got to grow. I'm sure everyone who's tried to do something as new and original as this is seen it's a hard battle. That doesn't mean it's not worth fighting. And watching them overcome the hurdles and still accomplish the goal and bring all these people together, you know, they accomplished a lot. I hope everybody gets to see that in their own light, you know. There's so many spirits we got to talk to and to share their stories and connections, you know. So to me, that was, not to ramble, I just that was the most amazing part of it. I mean, it was amazing to get to interview and spend those moments. And I got to tease, there was a moment where a couple of the people who were doing the event had their children running around helping. You know, they're younger gentlemen and the boys and girls running around helping, and to watch them interact and at times acknowledge where they were in the middle of it all. That was so cool. We watched Michael's son get to have an interview with Casper, and that was just a moment, you know, to sit and watch that. Watch a young teenage boy kind of realize where he is in the moment and take the moment to go, can I ask questions? Can I can I have a moment? And to get that, and then to watch Michael get to enjoy that. Hex's children were doing stuff, and they were all just, they were so much a part of it. You know, like, you got to remember that it's family. You know, it's not. I think a lot of people get misconceptions as to what they think is and isn't going to be going on at an event. You know, and then you get there and you realize it's way more family than you might think, and it's good. You know, like, they're not all running around. I hate to. You, the worst case scenario, everybody thinks, oh, everybody's gonna be running around and you can't have kids there. There'll be naked people and blowing pot in the kids' faces and all this stuff. And no adult is doing that. Nobody's doing that. Everybody loves their children. Nobody's doing that. That's not what's going to happen. And you're at an event like this, that's just not the vibe. You know what I mean? You know, and you go to shows. I go to so many different events. They all have their own vibe, and you can go to a place like this, and it's a very family and heartfelt and just beautiful vibe. And that was really amazing to be part of that.
Yeah, I don't know if you know this, but you know, I've been doing this show. It'll be 29 years in October, so 28 and a half years. But over the years, I've had different co-hosts. Most of the time, We started in a private studio the first 2 years, but from 1999 through 2020 and the pandemic closing down our cable access studio, we produced our show in a cable access studio, a really nice studio, Portland Cable Access. Now it's called Open Source Media. It's had several names and a lot of upgrades over the years. But at first I had a co-host, a lawyer by the name of Paul Loney, and then I had a doctor join. So there were three of us, and that was Dr. Philip Levesque. But over the years, it's changed at various times. And for a while, Casper Leach was a co-host of this show. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah, so I met Casper in Indiana, and I started advertising on his show with my medical marijuana clinics. And then he moved out here, I guess it was about 2009. And he lived here till about 2 or 3 years ago. He co-hosted our show for about 10 years. He and I, so if you go back to the archives, you'll see he co-hosted the show. We got a lot of history there. It's the first time I'd seen him since he'd moved back to Indiana. I was kind of surprised that he was there. It's happy to see Joe Hickey. I'd actually stayed at Joe Hickey's house with Woody Harrelson back in 1996, and Woody went out and planted hemp seeds the next day. But
Right.
a lot more to that story, of course. But
Yeah, I got to hear the story. That was a very interesting story. Those kind of stories, man. You guys have a history that's amazing.
we got to spend the night, well, 3 nights at Woody Harrelson's house in Beverly Hills. It was up on top of a ridge. He has a little creek that flows through the middle of it. That's a long time ago. But if right now your next project is you're looking at some local events, and of course you're welcome to come out here to the Northwest at any time. We have various events. I co-sponsored the Seattle Hemp Fest, which doesn't exist anymore. And as you probably know, I was the organizer of the Portland Hempstock Festival for about 15 years. But I had to stop doing that about 2016 because of financial concern. But it was really good to see Justin James Bridges pick up the torch down in Texas, especially since I grown up in Texas, was born there in Texas and lived there until I was 15. So good to go back there again. It wasn't my first time. Good to go back. So
yeah, for a while as a child, it was like our second. Growing up, it was like we were split between Missouri and Texas a lot. So we lived there off and on until I was about 11.
So is there anything else that we should talk about, Johnny, that we haven't touched on yet?
I'm sure I'll probably think of tons of things once we're done. I'll be like, oh, we should have thought of this, we should have thought of that. But I think we've covered most of the bases. I say, just to me, the biggest goal of all this is just to bring everyone together, to remember that we're all family here, and that these shared common threads are what unite us, and you never know where you're at. You never know who you're going to meet. And sometimes if you just leave yourself open to that experience, it can be greater than you ever even thought. Again, I'm just a crazy little hillbilly hippie here in Southwest Missouri, and just trying to do a little good in the world. And yet I've got to do some things, like travel there to the hemp stock and be part of the event and actually be able to bring what we do into the event. And from the feedback we got, even help enhance the event. Everybody thought it was a really good addition. It made a good addition to the event, which was super cool. So to me, it's just to spread that idea that we're better when we're trying, we're better when we're dreaming and we're believing, and we're better when we're in it together. And that's what we got to do. And I mean, that's really my biggest thing on it all. And I also thank you to you and to all the people who have put in the work that comes before us and that's inspired us, laid the roads for us to follow, all those things. It's valuable. We're in a really interesting time right now. Trying to uh, see and help and grab onto the future, but also grow from and not just totally let go of the past. You need them both.
Well, the late great Kentucky attorney Gatewood Galbraith said that it's really a battle between the natural cycle and the synthetic cycle, and we need to not depend just on the synthetics, and the natural world offers a lot of healthy alternatives to deforestation, to global warming, and hemp is the one plant that can stop those and help rebuild what's left of our environment and probably the most precious heritage we have to bequeath to future generations. The biosphere of this planet. And so something has to change, and hemp has to be part of that change because nothing else can. And,
Oh yeah.
appreciate you helping spread the word out there. It was really a pleasure to see your bus there. I was very impressed. And I'm sure I'll pictures someday. You got to come out here and make a West Coast run. So we'll see you when you do.
Oh, I'm absolutely open.
We'll see you next year.
Yes, sir. Well, it's good to meet you. And again,
it was pretty
sorry.
hot.
Go ahead.
Hopefully it'll be a little bit cooler. It was pretty hot.
Yeah. It even overdid our AC there a little bit. I mean, it was a nice reprieve inside the bus, but it was working for it.
All right. Keep working out there and restore hemp. We've been talking to John Seitz. What's your websites again, Johnny?
hwpworld.com, and you can find me on all socials at hwpworld. We all want to live in a hip world, a happy, wholesome, and peaceful world. Hemp for world peace.
All right. Thank you.
Long ago, when these ancient Grecian temples were new, hemp was already old in the service of mankind. For thousands of years even then, this plant had been grown for cordage and coarse cloth in China and elsewhere in the East. For centuries prior to about 1850, all the ships that sailed the western seas were rigged with hempen rope and sails. For the sailor, no less than the hangman, hemp was indispensable. A 44-gun frigate, like our cherished old Ironsides, took over 60 tons of hemp for rigging. Including an anchor cable 25 inches in circumference. The Conestoga wagons and prairie schooners of pioneer days were covered with hempen canvas. Indeed, the very word canvas comes from the Arabic word for hemp. In those days, hemp was an important crop in Kentucky and Missouri. Then came cheaper imported fibers for cordage, like jute, sisal, and manila hemp, and the culture of hemp in America declined. But now, with Philippine and East Indian sources of hemp in the hands of the Japanese, and shipment of jute from India curtailed, American hemp must meet the needs of our Army and Navy as well as of our industries. In 1942, patriotic farmers at the government's request planted 36,000 acres of seed hemp, an increase of several thousand %. The goal for 1943 is 50,000 acres of seed hemp. In Kentucky, much of the seed hemp acreage is on river bottom land such as this, along the Kentucky River Gorge. Some of these fields are inaccessible except by boat. Thus, plans are afoot for a great expansion of the hemp industry as a part of the war program. This film is designed to tell farmers how to handle this ancient crop, now little known outside Kentucky and Wisconsin. This is hemp seed. Be careful how you use it. For to grow hemp legally, you must have a federal registration and tax stamp. This is provided for in your contract. Ask your AAA committeeman or your county agent about it. Don't forget, hemp demands a rich, well-drained soil such as is found here in the bluegrass region of Kentucky or in central Wisconsin. It must be loose and rich in organic matter. Poor soils won't do. Soil that will grow good corn will usually grow hemp. Hemp is not hard on the soil. In Kentucky, it has been grown for several years on the same ground, though this practice is not recommended. A dense and shady crop, hemp tends to choke out weeds. Here's a Canada thistle that couldn't stand the competition. Dead as a dodo. Thus, hemp leaves the ground in good condition for the following crop. For fiber, hemp should be sown 5 pecks to the acre. With drill, the closer the rows, the better. These rows are spaced about 4 inches. This hemp has been broadcast. Either way, it should be sown thick enough to grow a slender stalk. Here's an ideal stand. The right height to be harvested easily, thick enough to grow slender stalks that are easy to cut and process. Stalks like these here on the left, they yield the most fiber and the best. Those on the right are too coarse and woody. For seed, hemp is planted in hills like corn, sometimes by hand. Hemp is a dioecious plant. The female flower is inconspicuous, but the male flower is easily spotted. In seed production, after the pollen has been shed, these male plants are cut out. These are the seeds on a female plant. Hemp for fiber is ready to harvest when the pollen is shedding and the leaves are falling. In Kentucky, hemp harvest comes in August. Here, the old standby has been the self-rake reaper, which has been used for a generation or more. Hemp grows so luxuriantly in Kentucky that harvesting is sometimes difficult, which may account for the popularity of the self-rake with its lateral stroke. A modified rice binder has been used to some extent. This machine works well in average hemp. Recently, the improved hemp harvester, used for many years in Wisconsin, has been introduced in Kentucky. This machine spreads the hemp in a continuous swath. It is a far cry from this fast and efficient modern harvester to the Armstrong model of yore. But here's one kind of harvester, at least, that doesn't stall in the heaviest hemp. In Kentucky, hand cutting is practiced in opening fields for the machines. In Kentucky, hemp is shucked as soon as safe after cutting, to be spread out for retting later in the fall. In Wisconsin, hemp is harvested in September. Here, the hemp harvester with automatic spreader is standard equipment. Note how smoothly the rotating apron lays the swath preparatory to retting. Here it is a common and essential practice to leave headlands around hemp fields. These strips may be planted to other crops, preferably small grain. Thus, the harvester has room to make its first round without preparatory hand cutting. Here the machine is running over corn stubble. When the cutter bar is much shorter than the hemp is tall, overlapping occurs. Not so good for retting. The standard cut is 8 to 9 feet. The length of time hemp is left on the ground to ret depends on the weather. The swaths must be turned to get a uniform ret. core breaks away readily, like this, the hemp is about ready to take up and bind into bundles. Well-retted hemp is light to dark gray. The fiber tends to pull away from the stalk. The presence of stalks in the bowstring stage indicates that retting is well underway. When hemp is short or tangled, or when the ground is too wet for machines, it is bound by hand. A wooden buck is used. Twine will do for tying, but the hemp itself makes a good band. When conditions are favorable, the pickup binder is commonly used. The swath should lie smooth and even with stalks parallel. The picker won't work well in tangled hemp. After binding, hemp is shocked as soon as possible to stop further retting. In 1942, 14,000 acres of fiber hemp were harvested in the United States. The goal for 1943 is 300,000 acres. Thus, hemp, Cannabis sativa, the old standby cordage fiber, is staging a strong comeback. This is Kentucky hemp going into the dryer of a mill at Versailles. In the old days, breaking was done by hand, one of the hardest jobs known to man. Now the power breaker makes quick work of it. Spinning American hemp into rope yarn or twine in the old Kentucky River Mill at Frankfort, Kentucky. Another pioneer plant that has been making cordage for more than a century. All such plants will presently be turning out products spun from American-grown hemp. Twine of various kinds for tying, winding armatures, and upholsterers' work.